Well, Jimmy Butler has been suspended again, this one indefinitely, just hours before the Heat host the Orlando Magic on a Monday night basketball game in Miami. Butler is no longer going to be with the team. Shams Charania originally had the report about Butler being suspended, and this is the third time he's been suspended this year. The first time being 7 games, the second time being 2 games, and that suspension actually just ended on Saturday against the Brooklyn Nets. He was eligible to return for tonight's game against the Orlando Magic, but will not be with the team going forward as he is suspended indefinitely. And now that word is the key word that we are going to mention a lot here, indefinitely. How long will it actually be? Because with that language that the Heat currently have on the suspension, it could be technically for the remainder of the season. Now, some of you may be asking why he got suspended. Well, remember, the Heat, in order to suspend him, they have to provide a reason, or the NBA PA will come back and file a countersuit about the suspension not being right for Jimmy Butler. The reason? Well, he walked out of shootaround after being told by head coach Erik Spoelstra that he would be coming off the bench in tonight's game against the Orlando Magic rather than being in the starting lineup. Jimmy Butler has been in the starting lineup of whatever team he's played for the last 8 seasons. Ironically, the last time he came off of the bench was actually against the Miami Heat as a member of the Chicago Bulls 7-8 seasons ago. So Butler clearly did not like that. He walked out of team shoot-around not happy, and now he is suspended indefinitely. Now, I borderline could see Miami doing this to try to provoke Butler to do and get the reaction that they got so they can suspend him indefinitely. Because to me, this was something Miami absolutely needed to do. The situation with Jimmy Butler was messy, it was chaotic, and it's still that way. It's still a clown show over in the 305, but you need to have him away from the team. Because even though, yes, when he is healthy playing at his highest level, he makes this Heat team better. There's no debating that. But in order for this Heat core, this young group to continue to gel, continue to play well together, you either need Jimmy Butler in or you need him out. The half in, half out mess that has been going on for the past month and a half since all of this drama has started has been detrimental to the team. You see that word get used all the time. And why they suspended him. Detrimental to team conduct. Well, it has actually been that. I think it's prohibited the Heat from actually playing their best brand of basketball over the last 3-4 weeks. And now having at least some sort of clarity before the NBA trade deadline 10 days from today on February 6th to where you know Jimmy Butler will not be on this roster or in this locker room, I think it will help the Heat play well, or at least better than what they have been doing over the past week and a half in this next week and a half stretch. And we're going to talk more here, but I want to get a little temperature check of the Heat fans. Sound off in the comment section. One-word reaction to the Jimmy Butler indefinite suspension. Let me know those one words at today's pinned comments. You get with the YouTube ad break, scroll down, let it play, and drop those words down in the comment section. Rolly's one word. Needed. And I just said that. I think it was absolutely necessary. There are 5 games between tonight's game against Orlando and Thursday, February 6th, which is the trade deadline. Miami needs to have this situation cleared up by then. And they'll get a resolution heading into that February 7th game, right? Because here's my thing. There's 5 games, right? Even though the suspension is indefinite, I truly believe that Butler would return to the Miami Heat roster if he is not dealt before that deadline, because it is in the best interest of both Jimmy Butler's camp and the Miami Heat's camp to have Butler in this locker room playing at a full capacity. Now, if he's going to do the thing where he's just going through the motions and causing chaos, hoping to be traded before the deadline, that get away. But when you think about this long term, right, really just think about it. If he's still on the roster after the deadline, he needs to play well because he's either going to opt out in the offseason and seek a long-term contract in free agency, and he'll need his stock to be relatively high in order to get a contract that he believes he deserves, which is why he would have to play hard for the Miami Heat if he's still on the roster after the trade deadline. Or in any other trade, he should probably want to be playing hard for the Heat, because if a team wants to trade for him and he opts into that $52 million player option and then request another trade. Well, if he wants teams to come out and try to acquire him, it's pretty important for teams to believe that he would help them in their pursuit of a championship, right? So it makes sense for Jimmy Butler to play hard for the Miami Heat if he is still on the roster after the trade deadline, which is why I truly only believe this indefinite suspension is for the next 5 games up until that deadline. And we're going to break down more here, but we are sponsored by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in North America. I play Prize Picks every single day, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, it does not matter. And the big game is almost here. It's now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks is also giving away a free pick for that big game, where one of the starting quarterbacks will only need to throw 1 yard to win. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. You see the free pick. It's Patrick Mahomes, more than half a passing yard. Pair that up with another entry, and you can win real money. And Prize Picks puts their members first. All withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, if your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. They also offer weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25%. To provide even more value for your lineups. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, as we get back to talking about Jimmy Butler, and even though I really believe that the relationship between him and Pat Riley is so fractured, so beyond repair, that Jimmy probably does not want to put on a Miami Heat uniform ever again. But I mentioned just before we talked about Prize Picks, it's in the best interest of him to try to prove his stock for the offseason in a trade or in free agency by playing hard for Miami if he's still on this team after that February 6th trade deadline. And if you are Miami, you might ask, why would the Heat even want Jimmy Butler to be playing for them? Let the young guys cook. Let them develop. Well, it's beneficial for Miami to make the postseason this year, because if Miami misses the playoffs, they have a 2025 first-round pick that is owed to Oklahoma City Thunder, right? It's lottery protected. So if the Heat miss the playoffs, they keep their pick. Some fans might be happy about that. But then that means it becomes an unprotected first-round pick in 2026, which would then push the Charlotte Hornets pick you owe them because of the Terry Rozier trade to 2028 unprotected first-round pick. And if you have those two things occur, that means you are not able to trade the future picks in 29, 30, 31, 32. Like, it makes it more difficult to trade for players in the offseason, and the draft capital that you have just gets limited a little bit. It is in the Miami Heat's best interest to be able to owe that pick to OKC this year, owe the pick in 2027 to Charlotte in that specific year, so they will have more future draft capital to trade, whether it's this offseason at the deadline or the following offseason in 2026, when that's kind of where the Miami have their big plan going on here. So the Heat want to make the postseason this year, and they are not in the business of tanking. So if Butler is not traded before the deadline, I think they will bring him back, and they will no longer play the cat and mouse game of suspending him, not suspending him, keeping on the bench. No, this suspension here today is to make sure he does not get hurt leading up to the deadline. There's 5 games in between now and the deadline. They're still going to try to trade Jimmy Butler. And if he were to get hurt, that would throw a wrench in everything, right? They don't want that. They don't want to risk that. Teams potentially trying to trade for Jimmy Butler as well probably don't want to see him potentially get hurt on the basketball court as they try to work through a multi-team mega deal here. So it made sense for the Heat to always push Jimmy Butler away from the team until the NBA trade deadline, and then just see what happens after that. That's what we talked about actually on yesterday's video, which is why you need to subscribe to the channel, because I talked about this possibility of him being benched by Eric Spoelstra and talked about the possibility of sending him away until the trade deadline and then reevaluating if he's still on the roster then. So make sure you subscribe for that. And we'll be live actually tonight as well for the game against the Orlando Magic, so make sure you join us for that as well. We have a lot of stuff coming here at the Heat Report. And the last thing I'll say before we sign off on this episode of the show, I think the trade with Phoenix is unlikely, or it's going to be a mega 5-6 team deal. And we're going to actually talk about this more on tomorrow's video, so stay on the lookout for that. But there are rumors that the Suns and the Bulls have actually talked about Bradley Beal ending up in Chicago, and the Bulls are intrigued by the idea. Now, they would want a lot of draft capital in return to get Bradley Beal in Chicago. I think Beal would waive his no-trade clause in that scenario as well because he has a good relationship with the Bulls head coach, Billy Donovan. So that's something to keep your eye on here. Could Zach LaVine actually head to Milwaukee? Milwaukee picks and assets come to the Miami Heat. Jimmy goes to Phoenix, Beal goes to Chicago, and it's this 5-team mega deal where LaVine's involved, Beal's going to Chicago, Butler ends in Phoenix, and Miami gets some expiring contracts like Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis, and draft capital. I think that's something that we are going to start to see maybe arise as the most likely outcome if Butler is traded, and we'll talk more in depth about that possibility and what it would look like on tomorrow's video, which is why you stay subscribed. Like I mentioned, we have you covered with everything surrounding the Miami Heat and this Jimmy Butler saga, and also make sure you join us tonight for our live show between Orlando and Miami as the Heat look to get above 500 in a win at home against the Magic.